Right. While we are getting everybody in, um, hey Luke, how you doing today?
Doing great. This will be the hardest part of the whole conversation where I have to pretend like we weren't just talking for the last 9 minutes.
We were talking for the last 9 minutes? I
I
don't know.
was just chatting with your doppelganger. Yeah, no,
Yep,
things are
yep.
good. I'm here in St. Louis, and St. Louis and the Midwest in general are having the most beautiful spring in living memory, at least my living memory, which,
Wow.
maybe there are folks with longer living memories than mine, but it's been a really awesome season.
That's so cool. Austin, the last 2 years, the first week in April has hit 90 degrees, and we have yet to hit it so far this year. So I think it's coming close, but it's starting to get warm. We've got flowers out, all of those sort of things, but
And
it's
you
it's
dodged the
already
90
on the
degree
brink of
heat.
summer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got to celebrate those small wins.
Yep, yep, we gotta celebrate that for sure. Well, while we wait another couple of minutes to get everybody in, I want to ask you a question, and it's one of my most favorite questions to ask people because I feel like we get such different insights from everybody that has just a different perspective on the industry, and so I'd love to hear yours. Uh, if you had unlimited resources and could fix only one thing in mortgage, where would you start?
Mm. Okay, so I'll give you two answers.
Okay.
One is a problem Clever's not working on. One is a problem that we're working on and have been working on for many years, but you could keep working on it for another 50 years and not get to the end of it.
Okay.
Uh, I think one is I would love for us to get to a world where title and appraisal questions, things that are related to the property instead of to the qualifications of the borrower,
Mm.
are cleared upfront. And you think about the amount of certainty that would create for buyers and sellers if you could clear title and appraisal, during the listing process, because we know what the property is. We have more and more data about the properties than ever before. And suddenly buyers could have so much more confidence going out and home shopping, and sellers wouldn't have to go through the pain of falling out of contract, getting hit with surprises midway through a buying cycle. And I think we finally have the data to make that universe much easier to visualize than it was not so long ago. So I think that could be one of the biggest opportunities to lower friction and transaction costs in real estate. And then the other one is the education piece of, one of the biggest problems, what I get really passionate about, something we work on a lot at Clever, is the education problem of most of people's understanding of how real estate works
Mm.
comes from their last transaction or maybe their parents' experience. And lessons about how real estate works often don't translate well across city or state lines. They often don't translate well from one 10-year cycle to the next.
Mhm.
People are often really wrong about how things work, or they're carrying over facts and assumptions that don't translate well across time or geography. And getting to a world where everyone can get really personal, relevant advice and education going into the journey up front, to evaluate options, not in a kind of one size fits all generic advice way, but to get the advice that's actually relevant for the area, price range, and goals you have going into your sale or purchase. I think that education problem is one of the biggest, most systemic problems in real estate that creates a lot of work and a lot of wasted time for consumers and professionals.
I love that. Two fantastic solutions, and we've got another one in the chat. So all great. I'll go ahead and get us kicked off today. Thank you for sharing that, Luke. For those of you that I have not met before, my name is Melissa Langdale. I am the president and COO of the Mortgage Collaborative, and we are super excited that you are with us today. I am joined today by Luke Babich, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Clever. And we have a fantastic discussion planned for you on the NAR settlement and how to gain customers in the changing landscape of real estate commission. And so we're gonna chat with you guys a little bit today. I do want this to be super interactive, so I want you guys to feel like you can ask questions, put comments in the chat. The more that we hear from you, the more we can ensure that we're discussing all the right things that you guys want to hear. So feel free to blow up the chat. We'd love to see it, and look forward to hearing you guys and your questions as we go through things today. But Luke, maybe not everybody here knows about Clever. So I think it would be helpful to maybe give everybody a little bit of an overview of who you are.
Awesome. So I've brought a slide for it. Clever's vision is we envision a world where every person makes real estate moves that bring them closer to their life's goals. What animates what we do is that behind every real estate transaction, behind the dollars and cents, are people trying to achieve things in their life, whether it's give their kids a certain childhood or experience that retirement that they saved and worked for decades. And our solutions are only useful if they get people to those life goals. So our mission, how we're trying to do that, is connect people with the most trustworthy advice and the best solutions for every step of their real estate journey. And Clever's business starts with an education platform where we use data and original research and an editorial team to generate educational advice that's hyper-localized and hyper-personalized, that attracts 10 million consumers every year who are somewhere in the process of selling or buying a home. We then match those folks up with professionals from our network and use our platform power and our scale to negotiate better rates and service on behalf of consumers. And to date, we've helped consumers save north of $180 million on realtor fees while getting awesome 5-star service they rave about. And Clever's consumer experience has made us the #1 top-rated real estate company on trustpilot.com with almost 3,000 customer reviews. And then the way we've connected with TMC is the TMC venture arm is actually an investor in Clever, and we team up with mortgage lenders and financial institutions who want to provide a really tightly quality controlled real estate agent network and a localized, personalized education experience to their customers. So we partner with financial institutions and lenders who can run the real estate leg of their consumer journey on Clever's infrastructure.
That's great. So you have a very fun, unique perspective today that's going to be a lot of fun to dig into this NAR settlement. Maybe let's start with what we know about this settlement. They've basically, number one, everybody needs to be aware this still has to be court approved.
Yes.
So it looks like this is what we know today, but what we know today might actually change in the future. So just kind of level setting with everybody here. But really, they've come out and said two main things, right? It's MLS is going to change, and compensation offers will not be listed there for buyer's agents, right?
Right.
That's no longer going to be an option. And then the second thing is that buyers have to have a buyer's agent agreement in place, which the second piece is actually really interesting to me because there's a lot of states that require that anyway. So this,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, is not a huge change for them. The biggest change is going to be around that compensation component, and whether buyer's agents are going to, how buyer's agents are going to be compensated. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What are you hearing from some of your agents? How are you kind of helping to guide them through this?
Yeah. So, again, just Clever's got an interesting perspective because we've negotiated with 30,000 agents over the life of the business to offer lower rates. We actively work with about 20,000 of those agents. And we've conducted research with thousands of agents and consumers on reactions to fees, trends, and the NAR settlement. And so just to recap what you were getting at there. So listing agents will no longer be able to, if the settlement goes through in July, listing agents will no longer be able to offer a buyer's agent fee in the MLS. And then buyer's agents will have to sign an agency agreement before they provide services to a consumer, not unlike what a listing agent does. But if we think of those things, really what the goal of this settlement is at a bigger level is to force buyer's agents to have a conversation about price in exchange for service with consumers. And today, consumers often don't feel like they're paying for their buyer's agent because it's rolled into the cost of the home, and the price of that representation is fixed by the home seller, not discussed by the buyer with their agent at any point. And so there's a few things I want to kind of hit on just in terms of the facts that I think have not gotten quite as much airtime as they should, but are really material to how this will play out. And the biggest one is that sellers are still allowed with their listing agent to offer a buyer concession, a seller concession to the buyer that can be used to cover the cost of a real estate agent. Yeah. So if I'm a seller in St. Louis, today I pay typically a 2.7% buyer's agent fee, and I put that in the MLS. Well, I won't be able to do that anymore. But what I can do is say, I'll cover up to 2.7% in seller concessions, which could be used towards a buyer's agent. So the only thing that changes there structurally is that if a buyer comes and is unrepresented, they could just collect that 2.7% off the price of the home. Wow. Or if that buyer has agreed with their agent that they're only going to pay 1.5% for the cost of representation, the buyer can still collect the rest of that concession, 1.2% going into their pocket. And just recently, the GSEs cleared up one of the biggest question marks that had hovered around this and threatened to delay the settlement from going through. And they said, if a seller concession is used to cover the cost of buyer's agent representation, that isn't going to hit that 2 to 9% cap on concessions that can be rolled into a conforming loan. And so, in practice, the industry is giving agents ways to preserve some semblance of the status quo. Sellers are very likely still going to offer those concessions with their agents, just as they do today. But now the buyer's agents are going to have pressure to sell to the buyer. Are they worth that full 2.7% in my area, right? So 2 to 3%, the buyer's agents are now going to have to justify that price to the buyer. And buyers are going to have a mechanism through which they can keep whatever the market demands, whatever they decide they're not willing to pay out of that. And so, I've had some folks ask, are listing agents actually going to do that? Are they going to offer the 2.7% or 3%, whatever it is locally? I think the answer is definitely yes. There's a great precedent that agents will cooperate. It's what they do. Yeah. They need to keep those professional relationships. But so the biggest shift is the pressure that will fall on buyer's agents when this comes through to position the value of their services and see when they have to have that conversation and get a buyer to sign on the dotted line, how much of that 2.7%, 3% are they actually able to get a buyer to sign up for? That will be the big question. Let me pause for a beat there. Where do you want to kind of steer things next?
Oh, goodness. We have so many things to touch on. I think, my first kind of question is, knowing all of those things, knowing kind of the facts that are in front of us today, how do lenders need to prepare, right? How can we help our TMC family lender network to be prepared for being a great resource both to buyers and to agents as we're starting to, try to navigate what might be in front of us?
Yeah, great question. So I think that gets into some of the macro considerations, not about what would happen if the settlement went through, what would definitely happen, but what might happen, what's likely to play out. And I think some of what's likely to play out is, number one, we will see more buyers want to DIY, but I don't think that will be the overriding trend here. And when we've surveyed home buyers and when we've seen markets where buyer's agency agreements are common, buyers still opt for agents. So if there's anyone on the call wondering, are buyer's agents about to go up in smoke? I'm betting against that. And if you want to hit me up in the chat, I'll happily put money where my mouth is on that one. I think buyer's agents have a bright future ahead, even if there is a compressed revenue per transaction. Now, the second thing, which might impact, but I guess, again, if I'm a lender, I might go, do I have a strategy around working with buyers who want to DIY more? That might be a niche that some folks, especially folks with a strong consumer direct muscle, are interested in playing in. And that might be an area that has some short-term tailwinds behind you. The second macro trend is I do think we'll see buyers agents trying to unbundle and rebundle the services that they offer in different ways. We're already seeing some folks trying to jump on that opportunity to say, hey, if you're just looking for the final mile of paperwork and negotiations, maybe it's 1%, and I'm your insurance policy and your quarterback through close of escrow. But if you want me to help you go to showings up to X showings over the next 6 months, well, it's going to be 1.5 or 2% if we close the home. And you'll see some agents trying to compete on a lower price, and experienced seasoned agents with a great track record saying, I'm worth the full 3% because I'm going to net you that in savings because I'm such a strong negotiator, right? Those trends are going to take some time to play out. And I think it's very unlikely that we see a winner take all dynamic there. We're going to see a wider range of solutions and offerings for buyers. If I'm a lender, staying in sync on what my agents are offering, my agent partners, and being able to reinforce the way they're positioning their value and understand what gaps in service are being created that I as a lender might pick up. And also knowing which kind of agents you want to partner with. And there's going to be opportunities for new niches in pricing and service models to emerge. And I think folks strategically should get clear on, are you trying to support agents who want to differentiate on price or agents who are going to be selling into the absolute premium? I think both kinds of agents are going to be able to thrive because we see that today on the listing side. And this is just creating the opportunity for the same kind of market dynamics to play out more easily. The last dynamic that I'd be keeping an eye on if I'm a mortgage lender is I think there will be a lot fewer agents in the business 5 years from now than there are today. And I think that will be a great thing. Real estate agents have gotten a bit of an undeserved bad rep because of the massive volume of them who are not very experienced. And that dilutes the quality, but there's actually a core of agents out there who are very experienced, very professional, and generating a lot of value with local expertise and understanding of regulations and negotiation processes. Now, if we're in a world where there's more competition to differentiate your price and value, I think a lot of the agents who are just hanging a license and picking up those 1 to 2 transactions a year start to get washed out of the business. If you have a strategy that's based around trying to work with those agents versus deeper relationships where you can really align on a unified marketing message with a smaller number of agents, I would really be stepping back and taking this as a moment to decide what market my organization is well positioned to serve.
Wow, awesome. I think there's a whole bunch of really great nuggets in there. I want to think about this from a consumer perspective too. I don't know if you're hearing anything about how they're responding, what they're feeling, how do they think about commission rates today? Have you guys, heard anything like that from your brokers or your lenders you're working with?
Well, so we just surveyed 700 consumers who are preparing to sell their home and asked them what they think about the settlement. And 94% of home sellers support agent commission changes. And 50% of them say it's unfair that they pay for the buyer's agent, that they have to fix that price and determine that price upfront. Now, I have to offset that because those consumers overwhelmingly don't actually know what realtors charge. And the data shows that people generally think it's unfair, but 50% of consumers were expecting to pay 7% or more in commission. Our data shows that the nationwide average is closer to 5.6. So only about 1/3 of the consumers we surveyed actually were falling in that 5 to 6% range in terms of what they were expecting to pay. So there's a little bit of a gap between what consumers think is the market reality and their fear and injustice against it. And then they actually start sitting down with agents, and listing agents already competitively price their commission offering and are used to knocking 50 to 100 basis points off of the 6% that's anchored in many consumers' minds to try to create a competitive overall package. So I think one of the biggest changes is that I would imagine after a year of this media cycle and 3 years of agents being under a lot of pressure to position their value and talk more intentionally about commission rates, the consumer of the future is going to understand commission a lot better than those 700 consumers we surveyed. So I would expect that lenders and agents should be preparing to talk to a more educated consumer over time, someone who's more aware of how real estate fees work, especially because they're getting simpler. One of the hardest things we deal with when we're qualifying consumers with our call center on behalf of our agents is trying to teach them that this 5 to 6% is actually broken between two agents in the first place. People struggle with that concept. It's understandably confusing. This regulation will fix that. It's going to simplify things. And again, there's some buyer's agents out there afraid that they're going to get wiped out of the business. I just don't think it's going to happen. Now it will, again, require them to actually have a conversation about price and service with the people they're working to serve. So, I think one of the big macro trends is going to be that consumer awareness and education changing a lot. And the other piece will be consumers having, on the buy side, having to face the question of what really are the services that a buyer's agent provide and what are they worth to me? Yeah. Certainly, there's more data available about homes and neighborhoods and financing options than ever before. And so does the final mile that you need a human for shrink this much, or does it shrink this much? The answer is probably going to be different for different consumers with different level of confidence and experience. I do think it's safe to say that there will be a point in most people's home search where they want to go from looking at a crime map on Zillow or Redfin to talking to an agent who knows the local neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But what's the price they're willing to pay for that expertise, and how much of the final leg of the consumer journey do agents take on is going to be, I think, the big question consumers start to have to reckon with.
Well, they've never had to think through that before, right? It's always been preemptively, offered as X amount of the percentage of the sale of the home, right? So they've never had to put a dollar amount on that in the past. They've always just had the expectation that these things, are done on their behalf, right? Their buyer's agent is heavily involved in ensuring that the price that they're negotiating on the house obviously is an appropriate price, heavily involved in kind of helping them through the stages of kind of home inspections and connecting them with, professionals in the marketplace. Like the level of expertise, it's not necessarily that the buyers need buyer's agents for opening the door, right? Buyers already are extremely well educated on, the homes that they're looking for. They can see all the pictures, ahead of time. They are generally the ones going to the agent and saying, hey, I want to see X, Y, or Z home. And so it will be really interesting to me to see if this is a big dynamic change, or if it's just more of a shift in mindset for buyers and having to put a dollar amount to the services that they really see as valuable.
Yeah. And again, opportunities for agents to differentiate and position themselves as the premium agent who's worth the higher, sorry, got a cameo from my wonderful wife. Agents kind of positioning themselves as someone who's worth that higher fee versus trying to differentiate on value. And just as an anecdote, I was interviewing one of our buyer's agents in Colorado, who signs buyer's agency agreements with all of her clients today. So not a change, nothing she's worried about. And on the sell side, she charges typically 7%. So, listing agents compete on price today, and there are still agents out there charging 7% very successfully if they're able to position their value.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've got a question in the chat that I want to make sure we talk about too, from Stephen Milner. By what means will a listing agent advertise cooperative compensation to a buyer's agent outside of the MLS listing for a property that's listed on MLS, right? Is that an option?
Yeah, right. So, again, coming back to this idea of you can still offer a seller concession. You just can't restrict that seller concession only to being used to pay for an agent. And so that seller concession can be advertised any old way you want. And again, the overarching principle is real estate people can be counted upon to cooperate with one another. One of the MLSs, which I will not name or throw under the bus, put out a guidance to their agent saying, well, you can't put in a buyer's agent commission in our fields, so just put it in the agent notes instead. Does stuff like that fly when all of this works its way through courts and the settlement turns into actual enforcement? Probably not. But generally speaking, folks are going to find ways to advertise this, and the intention of the regulation is that any concession that you're willing to use towards a buyer's agent needs to be advertised to unrepresented buyers as well. So the buyer has the choice of how much of that concession they're willing to use towards representation and how much they just want to collect as a discount on the home. But that created that mechanism for the GSEs to step in and say, from a mortgage standpoint, we'll preserve the status quo. We'll let you finance the cost of representation so that buyers can pay 3 to 20 cents on the dollar for representation instead of paying the full cost out of pocket.
It really puts it in more of a model like a home builder. If you think about it, right? They're doing similar things. We have X amount of kind of concessions that we're willing to offer, and buyers have an opportunity to kind of pick and choose how they would like that concession to be used. So it'll be interesting to see how this shifts, and if there's going to be kind of similarities between the two. So, we've talked about kind of things from what lenders should do to prepare, what consumers can do to prepare. How is Clever positioned to adapt or kind of benefit from the settlement?
So what gets me excited about the opportunities this creates, there's a couple things. One, Clever is kind of a pioneer in lower listing fees. We recruited some of the best agents all over the country to work for a 1.5% listing fee. So that's the price that you get when you go with a Redfin, but you can get top agents from EXP and Keller Williams competing for your business when you come through Clever's platform for that. And that, I think that offering only becomes stronger when it's just 1.5% with no asterisk saying, hey, you also need to worry about this buyer's agent fee. Now, on the second side, I think this settlement is going to open up a whole new category of product, which is comparison shopping for buyer's agents. We see a dramatic increase in conversion rates on our platform when we help a home seller compare multiple listing agents, interview 2 to 3 options to select the one they like best. And we don't see that kind of dramatic lift when we introduce multiple buyer's agents, much more incremental. And the reason for that, I think, is that buyers don't feel like they're paying for their agent. Now, when you feel like you're paying for your agent, what's likely to happen? I think it's likely that buyers start to gravitate towards the same kind of experiences that we see for mortgage, insurance, credit cards, listing agents. Comparison shopping products dominate the internet. And this is a bizarre little niche that's a huge financial decision, but is overlooked, and consumers don't comparison shop. 90% go with the first buyer's agent they talk to. I think that dynamic is going to change, and we're very excited about that because comparison shopping products for real estate pros is the only thing Clever does. And so I think that creates a great opportunity. And then we partner with lenders, financial institutions, again, who want to use Clever to power their real estate journey. These are mainly folks who are acquiring their customers from direct marketing channels, a servicing portfolio, depository relationships, and they want a way to connect their consumers with agents. We're going to work well with their loan officers and reinforce the LO's relationship instead of driving that consumer away to a preferred local lender. I think the opportunity for that model also grows tremendously. I think we'll see more and more buyers prioritizing financing first, creating an opportunity for lenders to then pass the consumer off to an agent instead of consumers starting with the buyer's agent and then getting handed off to an LO. I think this will be yet another tailwind driving growth in consumer direct mortgage channels.
If that happens, I'm going to put my lender hat on a little bit. So if that happens, though, I mean, lenders are basically, when they're suggesting, actually, I'll take a step back. If that happens and this settlement occurs, right, where we've already talked about kind of the shift in consumer mindset, if lenders are referring to agents, it's probably a good idea for lenders to start to think through the same kind of model that realtors have had with them for a while, and having choices for for their, you know, borrowers to connect with agents at various, you know, that have various kind of experience and service levels in the area too. Do you agree?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether you're using a partner like Clever who's built that infrastructure and can train the agents to work well with your LOs, or whether you're trying to develop that in-house or empower, you know, retail loan officers even to have a panel of agents to recommend, I think it's very likely, to your point, it's a great comparison of realtors having 2 to 3 recommendations that they're used to pushing across the table,
Yeah.
playing nice with RESPA, but also having a tight network that they trust to work
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, of course. We do have, I think, a question in the chat too from Chuck. He says, I know as a lender, we can't negotiate on commissions with buyer's agents, but will they expect to come to us for something to offset what they have to negotiate? You know, do you see any shift that lenders need to be thinking about there?
Yeah, that's interesting because I guess you know, we do negotiate with buyer's agents on behalf of lenders all day long and set up rewards programs where the agent is giving a portion of their commission to the consumer. So this is something that, you know, is a model that we already do on behalf of lenders and that hypothetically a lender could do. It's certainly a lot easier when you've got, you know, Clever has 20 to 40% of the typical total business of the agents in our network. So we're able to go to them and say, hey, we've got a new lender partner, and here's the amount of cash out of the commission that they want for their customers for this program we're going to run together. But that actually, you know, there's no reason you couldn't negotiate with a buyer's agent and structure a program around what you want to be able to offer jointly. That's something we're doing a lot of. I think we're going to see more and more of that in the industry. Lenders and real estate partners trying to align their programs and kind of consumer offerings. Now, on the flip side, will you see buyer's agents trying to come after lenders? Chuck, I think, hit me in the chat if I'm misunderstanding the question, but it sounds like the question is, if buyer's agents are facing margin compression, are they going to be coming after their lender partners saying, make it up to me somehow? You know, do more on behalf of my, yeah. You know, I think you could see that. You know, it's probably not the thing I would be losing sleep over as a lender for a couple reasons. I think if I'm an agent, what I'm really going to care about is not screwing up my transactions. And that's probably the number one thing when we talk to our agents that they care about with their lenders today, and very likely to be the number one thing in the future when they've won the trust of an agency agreement, but now need to actually get that buyer through closing to successfully monetize. So are they going to be coming after you to offer more incentives to consumers? I don't think so. You know, most of the lenders I've seen out there in the market have been facing huge amounts of margin pressure for a long time and responding to it and trying to be cost competitive with one another because the you know, the lenders you know, face comparison shopping products where there's transparency around rates and you face a lot of pressure to be competitive. So if anything, I think, you know, there's just a little bit of justice if I'm a lender looking at this going, okay, finally, the agents are facing a little bit of margin pressure too. Probably about time, right? So, you know, I do think there are opportunities if you're a lender to try to, again, find ways to align your offerings with real estate partners. Just to give you an idea, when we're working with our partners and they're sending us their buyers, we're matching them with agents. We've done programs where we can put that commission discount on the closing disclosure to help someone hit a target cash to close, right? And that collaboration can actually be the difference in getting a buyer into the home that they want. So I think there will be opportunities for lenders to try to align, understand what their real estate partners are doing and how they're structuring their fees and services, and come up with creative ways to make better wins. But I don't think the buyer's agents are going to have any more leverage than they do today to try and get you to lower rates on behalf of their clients.
Yeah, I agree. William has a question too. He says, you talked about this a little bit earlier. Do you see a sliding scale offered by buyer's agents based on how much the agent has to do to complete the transaction?
Bill, great to see you on the line. Bill's a longtime mentor, and the Clever Pro channel of what we do with lenders would not exist without Bill's advice several years ago. Yeah, Bill, I think that's very likely. And again, I think we'll see that structured in different ways. So folks have talked about kind of a fee for service model. Does that take hold? I think it's less likely. Not to say those models won't exist, but do they become the norm? Again, if someone wants to start a bet in the chat, I'm betting against fee for service becoming a norm. I don't think consumers are going to want to pay $25 for a showing and $500 for paperwork. I think their biggest fear is that they don't know the correct services to pay for in the transaction. They don't want to screw it up. That's why they're willing to pay professionals. Now, on the other hand, if the agent is just going to own the final mile of paperwork and transactions, or even if a consumer was willing to never meet face-to-face, but talk to a licensed professional to manage the negotiations and paperwork virtually over the phone. Do you see models like that emerge where someone might be paying 50 or 100 basis points for a more limited form of representation? I think absolutely. And there's great precedent for that on the sell side. Still not the norm. It's not what most people choose to do, but it's a meaningful 10 to 12% of the market. And I think we'll see equivalents of that arise on the buy side. All the way up to, again, folks charging more for sending you listings, taking you to showings over a longer time commitment might be a higher fee. So I think we'll see models like that emerge. And I think there's going to be a flurry of activity of agents bundling and unbundling services and fees in different ways come July. And I don't think we'll see a single model dominate the market. I think we'll see different models emerge to serve different consumer profiles and the realities of different local markets, which again gets me excited because that's the kind of thing at Clever we're very well positioned to learn from what's happening in our different geographies and different segments of our network and not try to force the entire mass of US real estate and the millions of different consumers transacting every year into a single square hole.
Luke, what role do you think technology and digital platforms play in, adapting to the change brought on with this settlement?
So probably the one of the biggest factors there is the continued rise in availability of information about homes in local neighborhoods. And if we think about why it's possible to talk about rebundling buyer's agent services in this way, it's because we now have listing platforms that make it even easier for a consumer to search for homes than it is for their agent. That wasn't true 30 years ago. But now most of the agents I talk to use a platform like Zillow, not their local MLS, to search for listings. And then because we have things like super lockboxes that make it incredibly easy to do showings and look at homes, as well as intermediaries where floor plans and virtual tours are also becoming much more prevalent. So the amount of information a consumer can self-serve to get to that, I'm 90% confident I want to buy this home, and maybe even a decision on price, that technology is going to create some of the biggest opportunities to create savings for consumers by moving the buyer's agent down into the final mile of the transaction and compressing how much you need them for. Now, does that mean a loss for agents? I think not necessarily. I think great agents probably make it up in volume very quickly and generate a more predictable, sustainable business because they don't have to deal with these uncertain cycles of buyers counting on them for 7 months and having to manage this very finicky, unpredictable pipeline where maybe 3 out of 5 will never close, let alone close with that agent. So I think that's not necessarily a bad thing for agents, that they're kind of owning more of a final mile. And then I think it does create a big opportunity for lenders, where lenders who are able to be more of the bulwark of the consumer's real estate team, educate them, talk them through how to approach the home search. You're going to have more and more consumers coming to you who don't have an agent or are not as dependent on the agent to start to make decisions about where to search for homes and what homes to actually spend time looking seriously at.
All right, so last question while we have a few minutes left. How can sales teams lean into changes for growth? into these changes for growth? You know, if we've got a loan officer on the call, what would you suggest that they do to help be a great, you know, kind of resource and advocate for the things that are going to be most important for them in the future?
Yeah, okay. So, if I'm a retail loan officer in particular, I think figuring out who is the segment of agents that you're planning to serve. Do you have the products and pricing to support them and to fit into their sales process? And are there things you can do to equip your partners to help win that buyer's agency presentation? Right? Listing agents obsess over anything that can give them a competitive edge when they have to sit down and justify why a consumer should be willing to pay them anywhere from 1.5% if you're going through Clever, up to 4% on the highest end for listing agent representation. And buyer's agents are now going to face that same conversation. So what are things that as a finance partner you can do to give your partners a competitive edge to win that business? Any guarantees that you can stand behind, any data on successful outcomes, any kind of flexibility or products that can serve a specific niche that your agent partners are trying to win. I think that kind of alignment among real estate teams is going to be critical. And the same thing is true on the consumer direct side, where folks who need to learn how to retain buyers who are coming into them are again going to need to do the kind of things we're doing and seeing done in our space all the time, which is aligning real estate networks and real estate or reward programs with the goals of a lender and with their value props, so that their loan officers are not just talking rates and pricing and becoming a commodity, but are helping solve the consumer's entire problem. I'm going to get you a mortgage and above all, get you into the home you want to live in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have one more question in the chat. From
Steve
Stephen.
with the heavy hitter here.
Yeah, he is. To what extent will buyer's agents look to enter the mortgage space to earn additional income by becoming a licensed MLO and acting in a dual capacity role?
Steve, it's a great question, and I'm not taking any bets on this one. I'm curious to see how this piece plays out. I'm going to take a slightly conservative view around that. Our agent's going to want to pick up additional income by learning how to be finance people, or by learning how to close more transactions. Now, my bet is going to be that the vast majority of buyer's agents don't want to mess with the finance side. They want to spend more time doing what they're great at, which is selling, being a people person, and then negotiating. The great up buyer's agents I've seen in our network wouldn't want to touch finance with a 10-foot. But I do think we'll very likely see some people try to make that play, make that bet. Talked to a founder friend a couple weeks ago who's exploring that. And will they be successful? Might well be, right? We've seen lenders try to stand up real estate arms, real estate teams try to stand up financing arms. There'll be some new opportunities. Can you create more of a single point of contact? Overall, despite what many consumers might think, I think there's a lot of work that these professionals do. And I hope folks on the call agree with me that good professionals who really know their stuff are earning their value on both the mortgage side and the real estate side of the transaction, and that there is a real value in having specialists in both. But are there opportunities for folks to gain efficiencies, lower their costs while maintaining strong margins by leaning into their specialties? I think probably yes. So that would be my answer, Steve, but don't hold me to it if someone creates the game-changing realtor plus MLO combination.
I think it's, it's available today, right? I mean, this is something that is possible. And I think from everybody I have talked to within this realm, whether that be kind of regulator or GSE related, it's the intent behind it is really to give buyers one central point of contact for kind of the home buying journey. And, I think dual compensation and dual roles was really designed to be able to help simplify what a buyer has to go through in the process. So from that perspective, there are some advantages of it, but to your point, Luke, it's really difficult to be extremely good at both sides of, both the finance as well as, the home buying process. It would be like saying, well, I think I'll do home inspections as well, right? I think I'll do, right? There's some very nichey, nuancy things with each of those roles that I think, our industries have been separated for as long as they have because of those things, right? It is difficult, I think, for people to put their feet in both spaces. Not saying it can't be done or that companies aren't going to look at some options to do, to get creative, I guess, in that space to help, better serve consumers in one way, shape, or form. But it'll be interesting to see. Well, we are all up at time. Luke, I'm so glad we were able to take some time and dig into the NAR settlement. I appreciate you taking as much time as you did walking through all of the questions that we had and all of the questions that we had coming in through the chat. Thank you guys so much for everybody that was with us. Appreciate y'all taking some time with us this afternoon as well. And Luke, do you have anything else you wanna say before we head out?
I guess my parting thought to everyone would be, I don't think this is any kind of apocalyptic change for the industry. I think that this is ultimately going to create more clarity and incentive alignment. I think great professionals know how to position their value, and this creates an opportunity for great buyer's agents to win more business because consumers will expect an agency agreement to be part of the process. I think this really creates a lot of pro-consumer changes, and pro-consumer changes are always pro-industry for the right folks in the industry. We're all going to have to compete, but competition is the name of the game. And I think it's going to create a lot of exciting opportunities for folks to better serve our customers.
Completely agree. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again at another TMC Connect session coming up soon, I'm sure. If there's anything that TMC can do for anybody here, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Awesome.